The excavation was already well underway when I joined the team. The project leader, Graham Young, told me they'd located 6 human burials. One of them looked like a child.
It's obviously a youngster, isn't it?
Yeah, the bones haven't properly fused and it's actually quite small. It's interesting that on one side it's actually beautifully preserved, but where the body seems to be lying on and in the clay, which
they've gone.
Must be very destructive to the bones, because where its sand's been excavated from around it, it's actually in very good condition.
I could see that most of them were buried in a way that seemed to suggest that they'd been Christians, on their backs with their feet pointing to the east. 2 of them were buried in stone-lined or kist graves, a method of burial thought to date from the early Christian period between 500 and 600 AD. At least, this was the theory that the team were working on. But there did seem to be some inconsistencies in these seemingly Christian burial methods.
What's that? I mean, that looks like animal bone.
It is. I mean, we've got part of what is a sheep or goat jaw, and this I think is part of a rib, but that's much bigger, and I think that's cattle, that's beef, I think, there.
But I mean, they can't just be accidental, can they? I mean, is that what it looks like? Is it a food offering?
Well, we have got a small amounts of animal bone out of some of the other grave fills, but this is so closely associated with the burial. In fact, that there's 2 pieces together as well. Yeah, I think it quite possibly is deliberately placed in with the body.
That's not very Christian, is it?
It's not, but I think we have to remember that we're dealing with Christianity in a very early period, and exactly what constitutes Christianity, we're not entirely sure at this time.
Right.
And over the next few days, as work continued, we discovered more evidence that puzzled me. 2 of the burials turned out to have their feet to the west, the wrong way round for a Christian, and one of them contained some mysterious-looking objects. They looked like lumps of badly corroded metal. One seemed to be a kind of circular object, while the other looked longer and leaner in shape. But burying people with any sort of grave goods is a pagan practice. How do we explain away what appears to be a mixture of pagan and Christian burials that date to between about 500 and 600 AD? Now, I think that the answer lies in the location of Bamburgh and in what was going on here about 100 years earlier. Because this, at that time, was a border area, close to Scotland, but still about 50 miles north of Hadrian's Wall. So this area was never really part of Roman Britain, and at that time the people here would have found themselves sandwiched between Roman Christians to the south and pagan natives to the north. The delicate bones we carefully removed from their sandy graves may be able to tell us not only what these people looked like, but when they lived.
This is where we're ready to lift, OK. Right.
But radiocarbon dates obtained from tiny samples of their bones are going to take months, and until these are available, the only clues we have about the date of the burials are the corroded lumps from one of the graves.
That's come out much better than I thought. But I think, is that jaw going to stay on? No, that's...
The objects were sent to archaeological conservator Karen Barker in Newcastle. The first thing Karen needed to do was to X-ray the lumps to see what they contained. Once developed, the X-ray plates clearly revealed the outline of a small buckle. But the other lump was far less clear, possibly the tip of a knife. So would removing the centuries of corrosion reveal any more? Using a mixture of compressed air and aluminium oxide powder, Karen cleaned the puzzling object and exposed a small iron knife blade, broken in 2, but still quite recognisable. The buckle was incredibly delicate. Virtually all the iron had disappeared, and it was now little more than rust in the shape of the object. Unfortunately, this buckle could belong to almost any period in history, but the other object proved to be far more informative.
It's the knife that's a really useful clue, because the angle of the tip here, the shape of the blade, this tells us that this is typically Anglo-Saxon. It was made sometime between about 650 and 750 AD. But if the knife is Anglo-Saxon, then does that make our people Anglo-Saxon too? And if they are, then where did they come from?